So this week we're talking about the whole side. We talked about costs last week. This week we bring profits into the picture. And we're gonna have to make an assumption about what happened with profits. And the best way to introduce this assumption, I always find, is to go back to a movie that Oliver Stone did in the 1980s called Wall Street, in which their central character, played by Michael Douglas, called Gordon Gekko, was basically giving a speech telling the investors of a company he was acquiring what was his approach, and why his approach was so beneficial not only for them, but for the country as a whole. And the kind of the catchphrase of that speech that became really the mainframe of that movie was that greed is good. Greed, for lack of a better word, is really what drives the American economy, and it's really what drives people to innovate, and it's really what drives people to do good things in terms of business, and ultimately that means more employers, and ultimately means more people have food on the table, and so forth and so forth. And all of this is driven by nothing else than greed. Now, obviously, the idea that people only care about money and greed, it could be controversial whether we want to assume that people should do that or not. But for the purpose of the theory of this class, we are going to be, in fact, assume that the only goal a company has, or a manager or anyone has, is to do more profits, to get the profits the highest. So we are going to, in fact, assume that greed is the purpose of anyone trying to engage in business. Obviously, we can imagine that a lot of people go into business not simply because of greed. There are many different reasons why someone might decide to have a business or to have a store. But for the purpose of explaining the theory, simplifying some of these ideas so we can understand them better, we will assume that the goal of any business, firm, store, is in fact greed, and that means, in our language, maximize profits. All right? So that being said, what is profits formally? Well, profits is nothing else than revenue minus cost. And we're usually going to use, we can probably use R for revenue, right? And we can, we're talking about cost, we're talking about total cost. So let's use TC for the cost, right? The total cost. And if we use the symbol pi for profit, since we use P usually for price, then we can just say that our profit equation is pi, or profits, equals R minus C. And this, the goal of any business, is to maximize these profits, to make the most profits. Again, it's an assumption, right? We're not saying that everyone who's in business is doing that, but that's what we're going to assume in order to simplify the model and make it a little simple.
Produced by OCE Atlas Digital Media at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign.